This is a video response to Steve Shive's video, 5 Stupid Things About the Men's Rights Movement. Take it away, sir.
Hey, here are 5 stupid things I've noticed about the men's rights movement. It's misogynistic. This is the one inescapable fact about the men's rights movement that makes it impossible for me to support. Are there legitimate issues raised by reasonable voices within the movement? Absolutely, and I'll talk about a few of those in a minute, but the movement itself is essentially misogynistic. And
To say that something is essentially a thing is to say that it is necessarily that thing, but you just conceded that in that thing that is necessarily misogynistic, nevertheless have arisen reasonable voices that are raising legitimate issues. It sounds to me like these two claims are in tension. Rather, what you should be arguing is something like that you think that the representative sample of the movement, are people who are misogynists. But that's a different claim than the movement itself is inherently, necessarily, essentially misogynistic.
it's not even that it's actively anti-woman, although some of it obviously is. Most of it isn't the misogyny of the wife-beater or the determined sexist. It's the blindness, the insensitivity of men who can't or won't look beyond their own interests. It's the...
I know not from what dictionaries you read, but all the dictionaries I have define misogyny as the hatred and or dislike of women and girls. Whatever else that entails. I do not take being indifferent or insensitive or prioritizing what's important to me to the exclusion of what's important to people who aren't me and aren't mine, my family, my job, my whatever. That's not hatred. Or, if it is, then you have to concede that any time there's a definable group whose interests you don't pay sufficient attention to, you don't take sufficient account of, you don't invest enough of your whatever resources would count, that it's not simply that you're doing other things in your life. It's that you hate that group. Or that you're using a word in a manner that is inconsistent with its definition. Which makes me wonder why you're doing a video titled Stupid Things About This when you're the one engaging in the stupid thing, namely the inability to correctly use terms according to their definitions. One might say that that's an attempt at emotional exploitation, but for my positing that you just don't understand what the word means. And I don't attribute to malice that which is better explained by stupidity.
senseless panic of men who view every feminist gain as a masculine loss. Here are a few examples of the sort of misogynistic things I've noticed about the men's rights movement. It attacks
Lay the hatred on me.
feminine privilege while ignoring male privilege.
So the thing that lets you know, one of the examples of the hatred is that it attacks one privilege while ignoring another. Well, if that's true, then you'd have to concede on that metric. Feminists are misandrists because they attack the so-called male privilege while, very generally, ignoring female privilege. And I note in a moment you're going to find humor in that.
This whole concept of feminine privilege is hilarious to me. It's not that I deny that feminine privilege exists in our culture.
So you concede it exists, and yet you are downplaying it and finding that its concept is funny to you.
It's just that I think it's absurd to try and equate it with male privilege. The benefits of feminine privilege include having men pay for your drinks and open doors for you. The benefits of male...
It might well include that, but it is not limited to that. Some of the things that are included in it that for some reason you skipped over here, you'll talk about later, and we'll see if it's still funny then.
Privilege include getting to run the motherfucking world.
Now, this... Actually, I'll address that later on, too.
I think I'd rather pay for my own drinks. It seeks to minimize concern over domestic...
I'm just guessing you're going to have a lot of opportunities to do that. It seeks to minimize concern over domestic violence, and the cunning tool that's used by MRAs to minimize the concern about domestic violence is to say, hey, the problem's a lot larger than the feminists are saying it is. Indeed, they are excluding about half of the victims. Now, whatever definition of minimize it is that one uses, I don't see how you could honestly say that drawing attention to it and pointing out that the problem's much worse than is reported, that it goes much deeper, and that there are inadequate resources to deal with it, is in any sense minimizing the concern over that thing. It almost sounds like it's trying to maximize the amount of concern, so much so as to garner resources so as to effectively respond to it.
Violence. Sure, violence against women is terrible, says the men's rights movement member, feigning half-assed interest in the issue he's about to try to undermine. But what about violence against men? You never hear about that. As though there's this silent epidemic of woman-on-man domestic abuse.
Interesting that you mentioned that. What if that's actually the case? Which?
And you know what? Maybe there is.
And how would you know? Since clearly what we should do is put the MRM people, the MRAs, off to the side and ignore the literature that they have, the studies that they will present if you ask them for them. So let's put that off to the side. How would you go about determining that this thing exists? And you concede that it could well exist. You don't actually know. Nevertheless, you give it this what was it, invisible, like it's a silent epidemic?
And if so, that's a terrible thing. I don't support anyone beating up anyone as a general principle. Yes, I will take that bold stance.
Wow. You're really on the vanguard of being a social justice warrior, aren't you? I salute you, sir.
All we know for sure about woman-on-man domestic...
I don't want to sound overly partisan here, but tentatively, I'm going to come out in opposition to genocide. Just so everyone knows. I'm just going to take that faith leap right there.
Abuse is there are far fewer reported incidents of it than man-on-woman domestic abuse.
Yes. So all you know is that there are fewer reports, which begs the question. Are there fewer reports because there are fewer incidences, or are there fewer reports despite the fact that there are approximately the same number of incidents? And if it is indeed your silent epidemic, you would have that latter case. And my question to you is, how would you distinguish one from the other?
And if there really is this epidemic...
Oh, and by the way, and in so doing, so positing the system as you have, how is that not minimizing the concern over domestic violence, if it is in fact the case that what the MRAs claim to be true is true? Would they not be trying to maximize the concern over it, while you, sir, would actually be trying to minimize the concern over it? The only way that would be reversed is if it is the case that the lower number of reports actually is because that is a lower number of incidents, and that the reports in some sense model the incidence of these domestic violence offenses. Now, I'm only putting it to you this way because you said 5 stupid things about the men's rights movement. And since it seems that stupidity is problematic for you, at least on paper, I thought I might address some of these issues to you.
If wives really are beating up their husbands as often as many within the men's rights movement suggest, why aren't more of these husbands coming forward to report these crimes?
I'm going to adopt my feminist hat here. Victim blamer. Why aren't more women who are raped coming forward? Oh wait, you can't ask that question for the same reason. Although I think both questions are valid. Well, is it true that there are more of these than are reported? Why then are these people not reporting it in numbers that approximate the actual number of incidents that happen? I think that's a good question. I think it should be solved. We should probably try to get an answer to that.
Could it possibly be because of the same misogynistic macho bullshit that created the men's rights movement in the first place?
Let me see if I get this right. Misogyny, i.e. the hatred of women, is responsible for the bad things that are happening to women. But so too is it the case that the hatred of those women is what's possibly preventing men from reporting they're being abused. Do you think maybe, just along with my feminist hat here, that when a feminist says something like, women don't report being sexually assaulted because they're concerned they won't be taken seriously, do you think that maybe that has something whatever to do with why so many men aren't reporting they're being abused in some sense, the domestic violence sense, by a partner or spouse?
That these husbands don't want to come forward and report their wives because they feel like getting beaten up by a woman makes them less of a man?
Just to be nitpicky here, domestic violence does not entail necessarily beating someone up. You can commit an act of domestic violence by throwing a glass in the direction of someone out of anger, destroying property in that kind of way. So it need not be the case that it be an ass kicking for it to count as domestic violence. And that's something that you should bear in mind. So what you might be asking is, gee, are guys not reporting actual crimes of domestic violence, the throwing of the plateware or glassware, because maybe they think it's trivial? Because they didn't actually get their asses kicked. Things like that.
Because they're not supposed to beat us up. It's supposed to be the other way around, right?
Can you find for me, in the men's rights movement, I don't know, 3 people who think that men should be in the business of beating up women or anything of that? Can you find me an MRA who proposes what you just said? That women should beat up men, it should be the other way around.
Here's what I do know for sure.
Oh, good.
CASA runs a shelter for battered women in Hagerstown, near where I live. There's a waiting list.
For the men's shelter for battered men, the shelter for battered men that they run in your area, is there a waiting list for that one too? Who am I kidding? I think I'm just going to go ahead out on a limb here and just guess. CASA's not running a battered men's shelter. Or are they?
Here are 2 more stupid things about the men's rights movement. It discredits efforts to address serious issues. My problem with the men's rights movement is with the movement as a whole. I don't automatically reject every issue that might be raised from within it. For example, there are some in the MRM who have pointed out that it's unfair that men in the United States have to register with selective service when they turn 18, while women don't have to.
That's female privilege. It's so funny that women don't have to suffer the indignity of being conscripted into war and being killed. You know, like those poor men might have to. That's so funny. Oh. You know, now that I think about it, maybe that female privilege thing ain't all that funny.
I agree. Others have suggested that family courts might be unfairly biased in favor of mothers and against fathers when it comes time to deciding things like child custody.
Privilege. You can walk in there with the default assumption that you're likely to be the prevailing party who's going to get custody of the children, and not an inconsiderable detail, money. Female privilege. Isn't it hysterical? I am about to bust a stitch.
I think that's a serious issue. And again, I think we as a society should be just as intolerant of domestic abuse that victimizes men as we have become, relatively recently, I would like to point out, of domestic violence that victimizes women.
Notably, the best way to do that is for people like you not to say, oh, what is it, just a silent epidemic of men getting bitch slapped around by their wives? Maybe. Just try this if you want to see how it works. Go petition your local government to fund a study to determine whether or not it is the case that women do, in fact, assault or domestically abuse their male partners at about the same rate that males do it to their female partners. And maybe we could even include in that study gay couples, so we can really get a handle on this, so we really know what it is. Go try to get funding for that. Now, Find something and call it a woman's issue and say this is threatening the safety of women, and go try to get funding for that and see which is a little bit easier, while you're laughing about this female privilege thing.
It's just that it would be a lot easier to stir people to positive action on these issues if they weren't being raised by a movement that is essentially a petulant, sexist reaction to feminism.
Someone who's like you, who's not a petulant reaction to feminism. And yet, notably, when you're confronted with ideas that are good, things that could well be, that you concede, could well be legit issues that really need to be studied, and that we don't have the information on, because apparently the epidemic is silent, which means you don't have the data. All you know is that you have a low reporting rate. You deride that by what is it, a silent epidemic? Which is exactly the proposition the MRAs put forward in the very first place. So, how are they supposed to package this, if it be true, in a way that some ass clown like you, will accept in a non-derisive way? I don't see a way for them to do that when your immediate reaction is, oh my god, he said that it's happening, when it's just super duper underreported. What is it, a silent epidemic? So, genius, the guy who's apparently all about the being smart. What's the solution?
It's unnecessary. If they care about equality...
You know what else is unnecessary? Your having made this video and my having made a response to it, and yet neither of us was persuaded by the necessity argument not to engage in it. So clearly, you don't think that the necessary argument is a good one. You don't find it cogent. Namely, your video is here. It exists. You made it despite the absence of its necessity. Why do you suppose that an argument you out of hand reject as being remotely cogent will not similarly be rejected by other people for exactly the same reason? I.e., the fact that something is not necessary to do is no kind of argument against, nevertheless, doing it.
Why do they call themselves...
And if the absence of necessity is one of the 5 stupid things about the MRM, then it's definitely one of the stupid things about your video and your channel and anything that you do that is not strictly necessary. A lot of stupid in your life, I have to say.
Feminists. I've actually had people ask me this question, and the answer is because women, that is, members of the feminine sex, are the group of people that has historically been mistreated and are now seeking...
Historical. I'm sorry. Are you saying that current laws are to redress past issues that no longer exist? Unless you are going to claim that there is this disparity happening today, right now, then you're not saying anything except, oh, in our past, bad shit happened, therefore, despite the fact that that problem was taken care of, we're nevertheless going to punish people who had no part in the thing that happened before anyone who's living now was ever alive. Hell, let's just give restitution for slavery and hand back the United States to the Native Americans. Some people go for that. Do you? It would seem to be a consequence of your argument because of past injustices. The people who live today nevertheless have to make up to people who weren't victims of that injustice and were not the people who perpetrated the injustice you are citing to as being the thing that's relevant here. It is not the case today that women are being oppressed in the West. We live in a democracy. Women can vote. They are more than half of the population. The society we have, apparently, is sufficiently kosher with enough women for them not to change it, which they could do. They could all get together and do tomorrow, and there's not fuck all you could say about it, but for armed conflict and response.
Rights equal to the group that mistreated them. Feminism is still necessary because...
What group of women living today was oppressed by what group of men living today on the criteria you're citing to that happened before any of them existed? Do tell, and be fucking specific.
Women are still treated unequally in our culture relative to men.
You're right. I draw your attention to, I don't know, that hilarious affair about their not having to register for the Selective Service. they're having the privilege not to be conscripted, to be forcibly killed in their quest to rule the world. Ruling the world. As one of the ruling class, why is it that I'm insisting that I get myself killed for the privilege of ruling? Why wouldn't I, as part of the class who rules, take the other class, presumably who I'm ruling, and make them go do the dying for me? I'm pretty stupid, aren't I? Or maybe things aren't the way that you portray them.
The men's rights movement is unnecessary.
By the way, just pointing out, it's not equal. It is not an equality of citizenship for women to be excluded from selective service. Now, that is unequal, but because it cuts in their favor, that doesn't register in your little mind about being as counting as an inequality. You think of inequality with respect to women relative to men as being these instances in which they may happen to get the shit end of the stick rather than be the pretty little princess running around screaming, I'm free, I don't have to worry about that, like the inferior burden of evidence they have to present in a court to get custody of their children and demand payment from their husbands, like the fact that it is a matter of right that they don't have to worry about being conscripted into battle to be slaughtered, unlike the ruling class, the men, do to themselves, because apparently they haven't really figured out what that ruling class thing is all about, or maybe the issues you're talking about with respect to that deal more with class distinctions than with sex distinctions.
And ridiculous because we, that is, those of us with penises, dominate
Assumes facts, not in evidence. I demand to see some proof, sir.
business, government, religion, you name it. And we always have. We've never had to face what women have to face.
And what do women have to face? What is it that men have to face that's just so easy mode that women apparently have some greater burden on? What is preventing the women from dominating these corporate offices, these positions of power? No one's keeping them out. Or do you claim that they are? Why is it that women, given a free choice to pursue it or not, very often choose not? That's not my problem. They have equal access to it, they have equal opportunity, and all they have to do is the work. Some do, many don't. So too do many men not. But I don't think that because not all men, even though it could be the case, are in positions of high power, that is because society is discriminating against men. For the same reason, I don't think that because you don't see tons of women in positions of power, that is because society is discriminating against women, particularly in a democracy where women themselves are the majority and they can have it any way they'd like by simply enacting some legislation.
Being paid less, offered fewer opportunities.
Paid less? Really? So, I'm a business guy, and I'm going to hire, I've got 2 applicants on paper, they same qualifications. 1 male, 1 female. And they both say history of being equally loyal to their careers, their employers, equally committed, hard work, all these things. And then I look and I say, oh my god, this one's offering to work for 75 cents on the dollar, but that one's wants to work for $1 on the dollar. I'm going to go with that one because he has a dick. And I just love to have dick hanging around the office. It's so important to me to have dick hanging around the office that I'm going to make a business decision to intentionally pay more money for the same amount of product, the same amount of work than I need to do just to have some cock hanging around. Is that how the decision's being made? Because that's what your proposition necessarily entails. That 2 candidates, being of equal capacity, equal qualification, if one is female and could be paid less, that businesses nevertheless will choose to pay more money for the same unit of work. Supposedly, this decision is being made by the people who are smart enough to dominate the world.
Punished for our personal ambition and assertiveness, being treated as less capable just because...
Ambition and assertiveness, if people either have ambition or not, they're either assertive or not. That's not society's problem. I don't know if that's upbringing or what. But that's not my goddamned problem. If women, writ large, don't have ambition or assertiveness, which, by the way, were I a woman, I would tell you to go fuck yourself for claiming anything of the like, that men have more ambition than I have, or that they're more assertive than I may happen to be, by dint of the fact that I have a vagina, not a cock. By ambition, you take that to mean to be in a corporate position of power. The fact that person A and person B are equally ambitious does not mean that they're equally interested in the same career fields or the same types of things. And it doesn't mean that one is more or less assertive than the other. This means their interests are different. And I hate to be the bearer of good news, but women, generally, have slightly different interests from men, generally. I didn't invent the goddamn system, and it's not foisted on them. It originated organically from the species as we came about. Now, whether people want to go against that or not is up to them. The thing is that, at least in the West, they have the choice. Do this or don't do that. The opportunity is there, seize it or don't, but you abdicate this at your own peril. You might not make enough money. You might not have the prestige. But oh fucking well. You made your decisions. Here are its consequences. Best of luck. Happy life. And you, sir, can go fuck yourself. I mean, yeah, go fuck yourself.